Hey there, Nick Janatakis here. In this video, we're going to go over how to get the duration of an MP3 file on the command line using FFmpeg, as well as go over a number of different ways to get the file size in bytes using a couple of command line tools that you likely have installed. Like most of my videos, we're going to focus on the why first, which is basically the real world use case of what led me down multiple rabbit holes to figure out this information. And then we're going to go over the how, which is the implementation details, which is a shell script that I wrote to solve a very specific problem that I had. But the takeaway there is, maybe once we go over both the why and the how, then you'll be able to take this information and apply it to your own stuff. And if you don't care about the why or the use cases, then feel free to jump around because there are timestamps in the description. But this all starts for me when it comes to the runninginproduction.com podcast that I run. And if we take a look here at one of the episodes, and I zoom in a lot just so we can all read this here, notice that the MP3 player lists that this specific episode is 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 29 seconds long. And iTunes, Spotify, and a number of other podcast platforms, they expect you to supply the duration of the MP3 as well as the file size in bytes in an RSS feed. And this website happens to be a static site built with Jekyll, not super important for the sake of this video, but we are going to be taking a look here at episode 85 here, which has those details here, where I need to go into this file, while I'm editing the show in DaVinci Resolve, the tool I use for editing audio, and writing down the show notes as I go. Eventually at the very end, when I export the MP3, I come in here and, these values are going to be empty, and I just go and get the bytes manually as well as a duration, up until I created the script to automate this process. And you might think well, why automate something like that? Is it really that bad to go and get the bytes and the duration of the MP3? Now, of course, there's worse problems that you could have, but still, I ended up doing this manually 83 times in a row, and it actually is pretty tedious. And before we jump into the script, let's just go over the manual process, because maybe this will trigger something in your brain to, maybe think to yourself wow, maybe I should be automating some stuff I do manually. So for me, it starts with opening up Windows Explorer here. Then I go to the sidebar here for the running in production site. Then I go to assets and podcasts, and this is basically a list of all of the MP3s. Then I make sure that it's sorted for the newest ones are on top. And this is the MP3 file that I export from my audio tool. So it starts with right-clicking that, going to properties, and now I have to pick: do I want to get the size or the size on disk? And sometimes I pick the wrong one because I forget, because, I'm dumb and I only do this once a week. But really I should just be getting the size. So let's copy that to our clipboard here. Then I jump back over here and I paste it in, but actually it has commas in it. So let me do that and also get rid of the empty space at the end if it happens to be copied. Sometimes it's not. But, done. We have the bytes. Great. But now it's time to get the duration. So if I go back to the details tab here, there is another tab called details. And we can see the length here is 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 29 seconds. But the interesting thing is, if I open this up in my audio player, Foobar 2000, this actually reports that it's 30 seconds at the end instead of 29, because I guess it rounds things up instead of down, like the Windows properties. But I also have VLC installed, which I'm not going to bother opening on video here. But the takeaway there is I basically cross-reference this value versus 3 different outputs, right? The details tab in Windows, Foobar 2000, and VLC. And if 2 of them say that this one happens to be 29 seconds, then I'll go in and put the 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 29 seconds manually, because there's nothing really to copy. And, again, way worse things that you might want to do or have to do. But this is tedious enough where I'm really surprised I lasted 83 episodes before I started to automate this, because, yeah, it is annoying and it's error prone as well. Now, speaking of error prone, if I actually do a get log here and take a look at a semi-recent commit from a week ago or whatever, there are 12 mistakes, 12 different episodes. This one was off by 4 seconds somehow. I don't know what happened there. This one's off by a second because I guess the rounding issues. Some of the bytes are wrong on a couple of them because maybe I took size in bytes instead of size. And the top one up here, I don't know what the heck happened. This is actually off by 3 full minutes and 6 seconds. Who knows, right? Because it's a human process to go in here. But now what I've done, if I go back here and go to my scripts directory here, I've written a script to automate all of this to where all I need to do now is run podcast MP3 details, pop in the episode that I want. And let me actually just remove these here and save the file. We can see totally empty, right? File is saved. If I run this now and go back to the file, notice that all of the bytes and the duration here, it's been automatically injected into the correct episode because this is episode 85. If I rerun this on a different episode, it would do it for episode 3, but not going to bother running that now. But another feature of the script as well, I can actually put in dry run, and this is going to show me the current details for episode 85, which is, in the file right now, and what it is going to change it to if I happen to run this without dry run. So, again, if I put like, whatever in here, it doesn't matter what's in there, and I rerun it with dry run, it's going to pick up that, hey, this is the current state, this is the new state. So there is, I guess, one takeaway here too. Like if you're developing a command line tool that does a destructive action, like writing a file or doing something where someone might want to see it beforehand, creating a dry run flag is very, very, very useful to have. And if I remove that flag and rerun it, then it is going to actually make the modification. And it was pretty fun too. Like once I got the script all working the way I wanted it to, I wrote a one-line bash script to loop over all the episodes. So then it did like episode 1 all the way up to 85 in a couple of seconds. And that's how I end up with that one git commit where all the changes were there. I've actually done videos about that in the past, creating, while loops with bash. So I'll throw a card up to that one. But now let's actually go over the script a little bit here, and we will see how it works. Now it is pretty long, sort of 70 lines, but there's also a lot of these aren't comments, but it's like basically, that output that we just looked at for the dry run takes up what, like 10 lines or so. And I've done videos about this too, by the way, creating like multi-line strings with this stuff here. And I'll leave a link to that one, but I don't want to spend too much time there because I've made multiple videos about that. But for now, let's actually take this file from top to bottom and kind of go over how it was created. And by the way, if you're looking for spoilers or you just want to stop the video, pause it, and be done with it, this is basically the takeaway of the video, right? It's getting the file size in bytes and the MP3 duration. And we are going to take a look at this stuff in detail. But for now, let's start here at the top. And if you've watched a lot of my videos before about shell scripting, you know that I always like to use set E when I can, which is basically almost all the time. But in this case, when it came to FFmpeg, it actually always throws an error with the way we're doing it here, but it's also a very fast way to get an estimate of the MP3 duration. But it means that I can't really use set E here. I mean, technically I could, but then I can like disable it here and enable it again, like after the FFmpeg, but it really wasn't worth it in the end. So that is why I am not using set E. And then up here, this is basically just assembling the file path of where the MP3 is in different segments, right? So we have like the source directory, which is where this website is actually hosted on disk, right? This is the Jekyll site that I just opened up here. It's in my home directory over here. Then inside the assets podcast directory is where all the MP3 files are. And then when it comes to something like the episode here, we're grabbing the first argument passed in from the script. That would be like the 85 that I popped in before. But when you're dealing with like numbers directly, like, $1, $2, if you're like 100 lines deep in your script, it's very hard to remember what those actually point to. So I always like to make named variables out of them. I did the same thing for dry run over here. That is argument 2. And then for the file path here though, right, it just concatenates a couple different variables as well as the file name of the MP3, because all of the MP3s on disk, they are named in this format. But in the end, that gives us a file path, right? That is the file that we want to get some stats about. And the very first thing I do here is make sure that we actually put in an episode. And if we don't, then we get this error message here and we exit out. So let me just open up another terminal here and we will take a look here at what that looks like. So for example, if I run that with no arguments, then, it says like, hey, by the way, supply an episode number, usage is like this. And if I do to get the last exit code, we can see that it exit out with 1 because this is considered an error, right? Like you called the script incorrectly. This evaluated to true because basically episode is empty. So then we just echo this out and we exit out. But there's another check here too, just to make sure that the file that we pass in, not only does it need to exist, but it really needs to like really exist, right? So we make sure that it's an actual file. And if it happens to not exist, then we just echo out that, hey, it doesn't exist, but here is the latest one. So if I rerun the script here with like an episode that's not going to exist or, anything, right? Then we get this really helpful message. And I don't know, I tend to do this for my own scripts as well as anything I try to put out to the world. I try to make my future self or who's ever reading this or running it, whatever, I try to make things easy for them, right? Or easier for myself in the future, because I could have not put this latest stuff here and just left this as like, yeah, that episode doesn't exist and we're out of here. But, maybe it is worth it to go the extra mile just to give me a suggestion of what might be a valid file, right? Because maybe for whatever reason, I put in like episode 95 because I thought I was on like 94 and this is the next one or whatever. But, it's kind of nice to know like, oh, here's a reminder, like 85 is actually the episode that I'm interested in. So again, just, I guess, putting some polish onto the script, right? And let's go over this find command, by the way, because it is kind of neat, I guess. So if I actually just run find on this directory path here, instead of using variables, I'm just doing it manually here. So that's going to be what, assets podcast. If I run it here, then we're going to get a list of all of the episodes here. But notice here that this actually has the absolute path to the file, We don't necessarily care about that, so that's what the printf is. We'll get to there in a second. But if I run max depth 1, and am I going to get hidden or on top of this text? Not yet. So then type file, and this is just being a little bit more explicit of what we're dealing with, right? Like we don't want to return directories. Let's make sure we just get files. And max depth 1, again, not super necessary for this script because this one podcast directory, it just has an entire list of MP3s. Like for example, if I go to add assets podcast here, it's just a whole list of MP3s here in one directory. So technically, it wasn't super necessary to put the max depth, but I put it anyways just to be more explicit and future-proof in case maybe I do get more directories. But yeah, once we have all of that, then actually let me zoom in now, and I guess I will clear this, rerun the script, and then we need to do print. Actually, I forget what this is. Am I being hidden? No, we're good. So if I do F here with the new line, I don't know, can I type? Maybe. There we go. Nope. What am I doing wrong? I can't type. Printf, there it was. Okay, cool. So notice how though we just got the file name now, right? Not the whole entire path. So that's what the print does there, because yeah, having the whole path isn't necessary because all I want to do here is just output the latest file. And then let me just copy these to the clipboard so I don't need to fail like a goofball typing, because I'm going to zoom in again here, clear that, rerun this, and there we go. Cool. Now let me just pop in these pipes here. What am I doing? Double pipes. Actually, will that work? Probably not, but maybe. Nope, didn't work. Just wanted to see for my own sanity. But we can see here that it actually got the last output. And before we get there, let me just rerun this again. Notice how the ordering of this is a little bit weird, right? It's like 47, 42, 78, and it ends with 38. If we just got the last one here, 38, then that is not what we want. So we need to actually sort that a little bit better. And that's where the sort command comes into play here. When you do -V, that is going to be like a very friendly version sort. In this case, we know we're not dealing with versions, we're dealing with this, but it sorts it in the way that we want, where it starts with 0 and it ends with 85. In fact, if we actually run sort help menu here, we can see V, yeah, version sort, like a natural sort of the version numbers within text. Great. So that's a really nice way to sort things in, a different way. There's other arguments here for sort. I'm not going to get into that in this video. But, and you can see, I so want to type in clear so bad, but I've been training my brain to hit Control L because it's a little bit faster for videos. There's a subtle difference between the two. Maybe I'll make a video about that one in the future. But going back to our sort command here, the last piece of the puzzle is to basically just grab the last one with tail N1 because we don't want all of them, right? We just want the latest one. And there we go. We have assembled our pipeline to get the latest file in a directory. That's basically what that boils down to. And then we just output it there. And again, I spent, I don't know, a few minutes doing this, and we get this little output in the end. And to me, it's worth it, right? Nice little touch there. But now let's get to basically the main part of the script, right? The information that we want to get, which is the file size in bytes as well as the MP3 duration. But let's start with the file size in bytes because this one, in my opinion, is a little bit more interesting because this one led me down a pretty decent rabbit hole of figuring out how to write a POSIX compatible or compliant way to get the file size in bytes. And using word count -C here, using a redirect here of the file seems to be the way to go. It works on Linux, Mac OS, and other operating systems as well. So if I actually run word count -C here, and we pop in, I don't know, maybe like the actual script itself that we're looking at above us, we're going to get it back a certain amount in bytes, right? 2164. Now, you might be wondering, why bother doing that? With the redirect, can't you just do something like that? Totally can, but notice here that it shows the file name as well as the bytes, and we just care about the bytes. And also, I don't know, I think there was some issue maybe with Mac OS on this one. Don't quote me on that one. I actually don't have a Mac, so I can only go by what I've read on Stack Overflow. But I mean, you could totally have done what is that, cut delimiter on a space for the first one, and we could have got it like this, but why go through all of that when we can just use this redirect trick that happens to be POSIX compliant and works everywhere? Now, there's all sorts of other different ways we can get the file size as well, because you can totally use .c, and then I think it's parentheses S there on the file. Is that going to give it to us? Yep, it is. But, and in fact, I think this is actually a faster way, computationally faster, if you benchmarked it, because there's less system calls or whatever. But, this I don't think works on Mac OS. I'm pretty sure the -C doesn't exist. If you are using Mac OS, let us know in the comments below if this actually works or not, because not everything you read on the internet is actually accurate. So maybe those Stack Overflow answers are wrong, or the comments are misleading or whatever, or maybe it doesn't work in the right. I don't know. And there's also another way to do this as well, using du, right? You can use du SB, I think, on this one. yeah, that also gives us the file name as well as the bytes. I think there was something with the B flag that didn't work on Mac OS as well. That gives you, what was that actually? I don't even remember. Do help SB. So S I know is summary. That gives you like, yeah, just a total display, but B was what? Yeah, it gives you size in bytes, but it's equivalent to like apparent size, block size 1. Yeah, I think it was maybe the apparent size that didn't work on macOS, whatever. But in any case, like we have all these different options to do it, and why not just use word count? You know, if you don't need like super crazy microsecond performance, or if you if you're on Linux, then use a stat one, because that's totally what I would do as well. There's actually another way to do this too, in a semi-cross compatible way if you happen to have Python installed. And this starts to get a little bit crazy, but you can run a one-liner with Python, and you can basically import OS, and then you can do OS. Yeah, I'm not going to make pretend I can memorize that one. So it's path get size, and then I think there's that there. But what do we actually want to do with this? Do we want to print that? I think we do want to print that. So we want to print that, and then we need to put in a path here, which is going to be what? Well, we got to quote that. Well, do we need to quote that with single or double? Will it take double? I don't know. But if we put in like the home directory here, and I go to source sites running, oh man, I'm going to get cut off here on my head, I think. Whatever. Let's just see if this actually works. Like, long story short, this eventually will report back the number of bytes as well. Running in production. Can I tab complete? That would be amazing. No, I can't. Of course not. Running in production, assets, podcast. Wait, what am I doing? Why don't I need to do it on this home directory here in the scripts? Like, I could just do it on this one script that we've been looking at, so we see the same 2164, right? That would be pretty important. MP3 details, I think we're good. No, invalid syntax error. Actually, let me clear that just so what happened here. Yeah, interesting, right? Because it treats this as like, this is being passed in as a variable, but this needs to be quoted again somehow. So I don't know. Maybe there's some issue. Oh, maybe I just need to escape them because I'm already inside of double quotes. No? Wait, podcast MP3 details in home Nix source script. That is saying that this directory doesn't exist. Podcast MP3 details. I swear to you, it does exist. If I run stat, it is going to exist. Huh, doesn't exist. Oh, it's scripts. Aha. Okay, Python, I will never doubt you again. I am so sorry. There we go, 2164, right? And long story short, this all boils down to, these are all different ways to get the file size in bytes. And the last one is word count this way with the redirect. There we go. So that all will match up, by the way. If you happen to be using Windows and you were to right-click a file and take a look at size, then that is that. Now, if we go back to our script, we finally have the file size in bytes. Now let's take a look here at getting the duration of the MP3. So in this case, if I run FFmpeg and we put in an input file, this one I will need to type out this path here. I'll just do it for episode 85, whatever. We can see here at the very bottom-ish, it says duration, 1 hour, 12:29. This actually throws an error, so that is why I turned off set E. Again, I could have wrapped this one command in that, and that would be fine. And if you're wondering, by the way, why I created these variables as empty variables and then populated that, that is because if I actually run shell check against this, then it is good to go. If you didn't do that, like if this were commented out, then shell check is going to be like, by the way, you should really define your variable separately so you don't get screwed over by things like this, where, the variable assignment ends up being like what it is instead of what you run in the subshell. But if I run this, it's going to throw a warning, I bet. Just kidding. Really interesting that I actually worked without a warning. Did I not save the file? No? Okay. Well, apparently I don't know what I'm talking about. I could have sworn, though, I've definitely seen shell check errors like that before. But yeah, there's got to be something else going on, maybe. I don't know, because that normally would have thrown an error for sure, but I'm not going to spend any time on that one. But back to running FFmpeg. So yes, it needs to be run in a subshell like this because we're doing some different things, and we want to eventually save that into a variable here and then use it later on, which we're going to get to some good stuff soon. But if I take a look here at this output, then am I going to be blocked? Yes, I am. I'll zoom in, clear, and then zoom out. Good now, yes. We do need to technically redirect standard error because, well, this is a hard one to sort of show off on the command line. But if we redirect errors to standard out, then it's going to appear that the output is about the same. But it's actually quite different when we're running it like this and piping it over to grep. Like, we just won't get the duration when we don't do this. And this was in some Stack Overflow that I read somewhere, so that's why I am doing that. But Let me just grab this grep here too in my clipboard so I don't need to type that one out. Yeah, so let's go back to here, and I put this in here. This is going to actually do nothing because I forgot to quote that. And yeah, so we can see here we get the 112.29. Again, if I just run that without the grep, then we can see at the very bottom here 112.29. What I wanted to do here with this regular expression was just one, because all these episodes, they are never going to be longer than like 9 hours and 59 minutes and 59 seconds. So we can see the duration was output like this, right? This grep uses extended regular expressions and it only matches the output. Basically, we only want to get the match of what it matches, not the whole entire line. That's what those flags are here. But the regular expression part is pretty interesting. So notice how we're getting, 0 through 9, but we're only getting one of those digits here. So, that's basically this part here, but it's not going to bother grabbing the 0. It's only going to grab the 1. And if you actually rerun this script, and it's gonna, no, I think we're good. If I put a 2 here, it's going to be like 0, 1. But like when I output my show notes and stuff like this, like I actually don't want the leading 0 there. So that's why I decided to only go with 1 digit in this regular expression here. And we only get the 1 instead of the 0, 1. And again, like I'm never going to have a 10-hour episode, so it's like a non-issue in this case. But for the other ones, after the colon there, we have, 0 through 9, but 2 digits, and then colon 0 through 9, 2 digits. So we get, the actual thing that we want to get in the end. So we are able to basically take this line of output that I have highlighted here and grep out just the duration. And when it comes to like the microseconds, I don't care about that stuff. And in this case here, we're basically just doing a floor, right? So this 29 is so close to 30, but even like the Windows properties labeled it as 29, even though it is ridiculously close to 30. So I figured, it's probably safe just to, round that down to 29 and keep it as that. And otherwise that would have gotten maybe a little bit complicated, because then you have to start doing math or whatever and figure out if you need to round that up. And I don't know, this actually works well, and I have no complaints with that. But in the end, we get the MP3 duration, but we end up having an interesting situation. So if I go here to episode 0, preview of what to come, notice the duration of this one is really, really small, because it was basically me just introducing the podcast, where I just said, hey, by the way, we're going to be talking about this stuff on the show, and 2 minutes and 50 seconds. And if I didn't do this little trick here, then we would have ended up with this regular expression match. And in fact, way easier for me to just show this. So let me zoom in, clear this, rerun this command, but we're going to rerun with the 1 here. And we're also going to go to episode 0. So take a look at what we're going to get here. And, if you want to think about this for a second, what this might output before I run it, it's a pretty interesting test. So what do you think it's going to be? Yeah, so it is going to, put in the leading zeros for all of these, but I definitely don't want to have like an hour padded 0 and then like, the second minute here hand or whatever. I wanted to just get the 250. So what I ended up having to do here was figure out how can I convert this 0 padded one to just be 250. And there's probably like 100 different ways to do it. But when it comes to things like this, I try to just break down the problem in my mind, treat it as like, an algorithm, like pseudocode. Like it was like, okay, what do I really need to do? It's like, I have this string with like a 0 or a colon. So maybe I can just make a loop that basically says like, if it starts with a 0, then mutate the string to get rid of the first character and then loop again. Okay, does it start with a colon? Then do the same exact thing, right? Get rid of the first character, mutate the variable, move on to the next loop. Is it 0? Yep, it is. Okay, do the same thing. Mutate variable, get rid of first character. Oh, it's a 2 now. Great. So it's like, it's no longer a 0. So then we are good to go. And then, this is eventually, this condition here is going to evaluate to false. And we're out of the loop and we're left at 250. So that's what this does here. And as far as I know, like I don't have a Mac to test this on, but I did run version 3.2 of Bash in a Docker container, and it actually worked. So I'm pretty sure it is going to work on Mac. And actually, I'm pretty sure, what am I talking about? I did tweet this out. Like I asked some folks like, hey, can you just test this one-liner that I wrote in a tweet? I removed all of this like MP3 duration stuff and just made it all fit in a tweet. And someone reported back that it did work on Mac OS. So the idea here though is, we have this quote unquote infinite loop that's going to keep looping and looping and looping. And, the base case is basically when we hit a non-0 or colon character, then we're out. But what we do here is we take this MP3 duration that we got back from FFmpeg, just like we see here, and we are going to get the first character. This is some crazy like mutant bash shorthand syntax to get the first character of a string. Again, I didn't develop bash. Googling around for this stuff, found a pretty good answer. It sort of makes sense. I can look at this months later and get the gist of what's going on, especially with the loop context around it. So we're saying like, okay, is the first character 0, string? Or is the first character a colon? It is. Then what are we going to do? We are going to reassign this MP3 duration, but we are going to chop out the first character, basically get everything after the first character, and that becomes the new value of MP3 duration. So this one, I don't know, out of the whole script, it was like the most interesting part to me. It didn't take like a super long time to eventually figure this out, but I feel like this type of pattern is something I can apply to other scripts. So in your case, let me know in the comments below if this ended up being like the most valuable part of the video versus like the word count stuff or the FFmpeg stuff, because yeah, I could see this being applied to a lot of different things. But now that we have, both the file size in bytes and we have the duration, we have all the information that we need. Now we just need to start modifying files, that one episode for whatever it is. So I have a couple of different variables set up here. Basically, remember that source directory. There's also like an _post directory where I have a list of podcasts in there. So if I jump back over to here and I open this up in the sidebar, notice how I have that _post directory. And by the way, this is Fern. I've made a video about this one. I'll throw a card up to that one. But we can see here in the post directory, there is a podcast directory, and this has all the podcasts here. And we can see episode 85 is there. So what this does is, that is published episodes. Now there's also a draft episode as well. So if I go to drafts here for podcast, I have the next episode coming out. I still need to edit that one because it's coming out Monday. But long story short, or maybe by the time you watch it, it already is out, not important, but notice here that this episode is in the drafts folder. And typically I'm actually writing the script against the file in the drafts because, a draft means it's not published yet, right? I'm still editing it or about to publish it. So the script here, it just gets both of those different paths for posts and drafts. Then I just have an episode regular expression here. Let's skip this for now because implementation details. But like long story short, I first test to see using the find command to make sure that we are dealing with either a published episode or a draft episode that has a specific certain thing in the file. Again, let's ignore this, like wave our hands at this, and we'll go back to this one. And it sets this thing like an episode path. So basically, long story short, we're dealing with a post or a draft. I don't know yet, but after these conditions, then we do know we have an episode. Whether or not it's a post or a draft isn't important. And then we do all sorts of different things here, which we'll go over in a bit. But, let's unwind this a little bit here because, this may seem a little bit confusing. I guess it sort of kind of is, but this find command is going to list out a whole bunch of different files in this one directory. That makes a little bit more sense. Then we're going to grep out just this one episode specifically, because if we go jump back over here, notice how all of these files, they follow a very specific format where it is year dash month dash day dash episode number, and then the actual like title of the episode itself. So this regular expression is line starts with 0 through 9, which is the year, 4 of them, right? Then we have dash, then we have month, which is going to be integer as well. Then we have dash day, which is integer as well. Then we have dash, then we have the episode number, because going back to here, right? We're now up to episode 85 in our regular expression. The previous one is 84, 83, etc. And after the episode here, then it's like dash, and we don't care about the rest, right? It could be any title. And then we just do dot markdown or MD there, and we are done. So this regular expression will just make sure we get that specific episode out. In fact, if you actually know a better way to do this, let me know. Again, I'm not saying I am the best shell scripting wizard ever created in the world, but this actually worked to me, and if it works and it doesn't look that terrible, then I am pretty happy with it, right? It works. So now eventually, if this actually returns true, like in other words, we didn't get any issues running this command, then we know the episode path now is going to be the published episode path, which is up here, and then this episode path here, which is actually just the file name, the episode, right? Similar to doing that printf there with the file name. Again, probably could use base name as well. In either case, doesn't matter. We have finally a single episode with the stuff in there. And then also, if that happens to not return true, then we just go to the else if here, which does the same exact thing for the drafts as well, like this draft directory here. And it tries to do the same match on the same regular expression, and it will set the path there. And, if episode path happens to be empty, because, it is empty up here, then we know it was neither a post nor a draft. So then it's like, well, that episode actually was not found. But here's the size and duration of the MP3. So this is kind of just handling an edge case where maybe for whatever reason, I have the MP3 on disk in that assets directory, but the episode itself doesn't exist anywhere in the post directory or somewhere else. Like maybe there's a typo in somewhere, like I don't know what happened, but let's just say it doesn't exist. So then it just actually prints out the MP3 bytes and duration, very similar to what we saw when we did dry run before. It is the same exact formatting like what we see here. It's just on a one-line printf here with a couple of new lines. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's a nice little convenience. This probably won't happen in practice, but I figured I would handle that like just in case. And this one I actually exited with 0 because, maybe this technically isn't an error. Like, I don't know, maybe there should be a 1. Not 100% on that one, but I don't think it really super matters because really this code path is probably never going to happen. But then once we have, the information that we want, right? We have the duration, we have the file size, and we have the actual episode that we're going to modify. Now we need to actually modify it, right? Except if we're doing a dry run. So if we're doing a dry run, then let's just print out some information that we saw before, right? Current details. This actually just greps out the current details of the episode path without doing any modification, right? So in this case, extended regular expression with grep, and we just grep out lines that start with MP3 bytes, and then we have a quote, any characters, end quote, and that is going to basically match on this here. So that gives us our bytes, right? So it's like lines that start with MP3 bytes, colon, and then we have quotes, blah, blah, blah. I think I missed, there's a colon there. I didn't say it out loud, but I'm sure you saw it there. And we're doing an or, right? So we want to match both of them. So there's the duration as well. So we get both the MP3 bytes and the duration, same exact similar pattern, right? We have quotes, anything quotes, and then end of line. So that gives us the current details. Then the new details, really straightforward, right? New details are the output that we want, like, MP3 bytes, just like we see here. But and then we just pop in the variables that we have, and we are done with the dry run. What else, in case we actually want to do the modification? And I've done videos about this one in the past. I actually forget which video it was. I think it was like a HereDoc related video, maybe, I don't know. Like I'll put a card up, but it goes into more detail about doing an in-place replace here. So what's interesting about this one is, or an edit and file replace. Instead of using sed here, Perl actually works on macOS using the I flag. So that's why I use that. And other than that, again, very similar stuff. Don't want to repeat stuff I've done in another video, but the idea here is we are going to search for very similar regular expression as up here, where, lines that start with this, blah, 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 blah. What are we going to do? We're going to replace it with this basically, right? That's what we see here. And then we're going to do the same thing for the duration, same exact thing, and we're going to apply that to the episode path. And just like another tip about using Perl here to do in-place edits, you can actually use semicolon here and pass in this PE here as many times as you want in case you want to do multiple replaces on a single file. And that, my friends, leads us to the end of the script. And now I have an automated solution where if I ever want to get the bytes and duration of whatever episode, like let's just say I want to do episode 0, then I can cancel that out, jump over here, rerun the up arrow 100 times because I don't want to do reverse searching history on video because I forgot to clear that out. Anyways, it's going to be easier just for me to type this out. So if I do episode 0 there and jump back, then it works. And yeah. One thing before we wrap this up, I mentioned, I think, doing that one-liner that basically did the complete loop. So let me clear this, paste this in. I don't want to run this because I already did it, and but this is the loop. So the idea here is, we're going to set our counter to 1, and we are going to loop until, in this case, episode 85 was not existent at the time of creating this loop because I just copied this off like a little clipboard I had off to the side. But, this is basically one more than the maximum number of episodes that I have. And it is going to keep looping while the counter is less than that. And what is it going to do? It is going to run the script that we just took a look at here, putting in the counter for the episode number. Then it's going to increment the counter by 1, and it's going to continue to loop until eventually it is going to finish. And why not? Maybe I should run it now, and it should technically do its thing. And then if I do a get status, there should be no modifications at all because nothing changed because they all have the correct number of bytes and the correct number of durations. And the reason that takes forever is FFmpeg just takes kind of a long time to get the information from a file. But if I do a get status here, let me actually just go back to the other directory, then yeah, there's probably going to be one change here because I'm currently editing next week's episode with John here. That's coming out episode 86 on Monday, but probably going to be out by the time you watch this video. But in any case, we can see nothing changed there. And, going back to what I just said before about FFmpeg, there is a technically more accurate way to get the duration of the file. So this technically goes pretty sort of kind of fast, but it's like an estimate of the duration. I think there is another way where you have to supply an output to a file, but I think you can do something like setting it to like null, and then like you redirect to dev null or something like that, and it'll give you a more accurate duration. But then it actually goes through the file and begins like playing it at like a crazy speed or whatever. But like it'll take like 30 seconds or something to go through like an hour video or something like that. Like I guess it's dependent on your machine specs, but it takes like 5 to 10 to 20 whatever seconds to figure out the real duration. But in my case here, I actually did do that on like 5 different episodes, and in all 5 episodes, the estimated duration, which I guess it calculates off like the bit rate or something, was accurate down to the second. So that worked for me. Yeah, I think that is about it for this one. Very long video, I know, almost 40 minutes long. Just to basically go over, here's how to get the file size in bytes. Here's how to get the MP3. But, for me, it's about the journey, right? The journey is more interesting than the destination. And the destination is the easy part. Couple lines of code here, which will be in a gist, by the way, if you want to check them out. So with that said, if you have any comments or questions about this video, let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all of them. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up because it does help a lot. And on that note, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.